Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I am a woman on a mission to help you develop the Zettelkasten of your dream and have it sitting next to you on your work table where it can help you with your knowledge development, gaining insights, and all of the reasons that drew you to the Zettelkasten in the first place. Well, tonight we are still in categories. Now, this time it's a bit of a challenge. The last category type that we talked about was set categories, and this is the kind of categories that most people think of when they talk about categories. 4 numeric digits, and they have predefined meanings, and you have a list on paper that you pull them out of, and you build them into your Zettelkasten, or just build them as you need them. But I have a challenge to you because I think just category cards by themselves are fairly dead and useless, and I would like to challenge you to turn your dead category cards into living main cards. So join me in the down-facing camera, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, I think most people who are accustomed to the 4-digit categories learned about them from Scott Scheper. That's certainly where I learned about them. And if you did, then you are probably familiar with the categories that he recommends that he pulls from the Wikipedia academic disciplines. And so this list of categories will seem quite familiar to you. I have a set that's pretty much derived from Scott Scheper's. I preferred to have a little bit less scary titles. I wasn't sure exactly what separated formal sciences and applied arts and sciences. So I tried to get some names that were a little bit more common, and I fleshed them out a little bit in a category list that's actually available on my website. If you want to get it, it's totally free of charge. Or maybe you were in my Reawaken the Dream of Writing 35-week course on YouTube, and you were given a different set of categories, the first of which were related to personal use and writing, and all of the general knowledge were squished into the 6,000s. Same set, but with a leading 6. So many different places where you could have gotten your category lists. But still the most common of all is the Scott Scheper list. And many of you will have a card in your system based on Scott Scheper that looks pretty much like this, Arts and Humanities 1000. If you take up my challenge that I'm throwing down tonight, this is what you'll do with your Arts and Humanities card. You'll turn it into a divider, because that's really about all it's good for. This interacts with nothing. This is not a main card. It doesn't deserve to be a main card in your system. It's just a divider. So why not explicitly make it one? That frees up 1000 to actually be a main card in your system. If you're coming from the Reawaken Your Dream of Writing, it's 6100, and you probably put it on that side of the card. But same problem, if there's no real main card to go with it. So here's what I did, and this is just the starters. I said, okay, I asked Google, what's meant by arts and humanities? And then I translated it into my own words, basically just taking what Google told me and putting it in my own words, and say this represents a wide range of subjects that look into culture, creativity, and language. So because Google was my source on this, I indicate that in my source, and I indicate what my search string was that gave me something in more formal language. I just converted it into my own words. But this isn't a main card either. It's missing some components. It needs my reaction, and it needs a tagline to bring the whole card back. So here it is now in a full-fledged main card. Now we have not only the definition of what goes into arts and humanities, and I've got my personal reaction. Yours, if you take up the challenge, would have your personal reaction. And mine was, to me, arts and humanities represent the sensitive side of life. And throughout my life, I've always loved music and art personally, but I've hated studying them in school. Something about turning them into a class really was spoiled it in my view. So that was my personal reaction. So I included it there. And then I added the all-important tagline, to bring the whole card back to memory. And now I have a real live main card that could be added to my system. The beauty of a card like this is now this can actually interact with and be a part of a system. Okay, now next question is, does your card have children? Are you going to need a directory card behind this? And in fact, I would suggest that you take all of your dead main cards and get on a program to gradually convert them all to real main cards. I say that you consider doing that because I don't want to give you too much homework, so it might be something you'd want to do gradually. Maybe when you add a new card into a given category, maybe at that time look and see, do I have any dead cards that are just titles, and convert them into main cards where they can actually interact. Now remember that when you really do a full tagline, you're going to want to index each of the keywords in your tagline. And for me personally, I don't like crossing out things on my index. So my regular arts and humanities, or whatever the one that you had that was just a title, is going to stay there. And I think I'm just going to do a new entry with the full tagline, and then just indicate with the old one something like a new symbol, maybe a E with a circle around it to indicate that that has now been expanded into a full tagline. Okay, so now that you've seen what they look like, why would you want to do it? Well, for one, so that your Zettelkasten will have only main cards and directory cards, so that it becomes a living, breathing, interactive system. But there's two other very good reasons for doing this. One is that if any time you go to make a new category, if you make it a full main card, you're not going to be making a whole bunch of categories that you're not using yet. You're not going to be going directory, 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 and piling them all up, and there's nothing inside of them. Because if you made it, and you made it a real main card, there is something inside of it. The card itself is a real main card. But the mere effort of doing that will probably cause you to think twice about making a card that you're not really ready to use. That way you don't start populating empty categories just because a number existed on a list somewhere. And the other reason why this is handy is that then when you actually need to use it, which we know is only when you have a new main card that doesn't find a parent in your system because it's often a novel area that you haven't yet covered in your Zettelkasten. So then you'll have the extra confidence because you can read the definition of what goes in that category and you can say, yep, this is where the new one goes. So think about it, and it's just a challenge to throw out there. Categories for me are kind of a love-hate thing. I do have a full box, and it extends to a quarter of another box that's all with categories, and I use them, and there are some things that I like about them, and the majority of what I have in my Zettelkasten work the effortless numbering system. However, I do, even in those, have quite a number of category cards, and I'll show you what one of those looks like. This card is written on a divider, and it's clearly a directory, and it kind of precedes, this card was kind of a step towards my idea of having a separate directory card behind the main card, but there's no main card here. It's just the directory. This is a case of something that I would like to make a main card to go with it. But there's lots of them, and I'm not going to just make it a homework assignment and try and go through my whole Zettelkasten and get rid of all of these. But I think the next time I find myself in this area, I'll be strongly inclined to pick at least one of these and turn them into a real main card. Now, the easiest way, of course, to avoid getting those going in the first place is to let your categories arise organically. And I think that's really probably the best approach of all to letting categories occur. But I will leave that up to you because categories can have advantages as well. They can give you security, they can give you a sense of direction. And as dividers, they do a very good job of helping you find the cards you're looking for because you have some nice placeholders that help you figure out where you are geographically in your set of cards. So I will totally leave it up to you whether you want to use categories or not. Of course, it's your Zettelkasten. What's it up to me to say what you put in your Zettelkasten? That's just silly. It's your Zettelkasten to do it however you want, but I'd like to challenge you to say, no more header cards. Let's make everything that goes into the Zettelkasten a main card that has a chance to spark a conversation. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.